Good evening. Welcome to South Asia Newsline. I'm Arjun Chaudhary. Here are the top stories that tracking for you on Wednesday, the 3rd of June. Analysts ask India to raise Pakistan's rights violations in Gilgit at UN. NATO condemns rising attacks on aid workers in Afghanistan. And Nepal limping back to normal as schools reopen a month after quake. And now for all the details. Pakistan on Wednesday termed Kashmir its inseparable part. This comes after India strongly opposed Islamabad's move to hold provincial elections in Gilgit-Baltistan, calling it a cover-up by Pakistan to claim legitimacy to its occupation there.
Pakistan Army Chief General Raheel Sharif on Wednesday said Pakistan and Kashmir are inseparable and that Kashmir is an unfinished agenda of partition. Indian Foreign Ministry had on Tuesday, through a strongly worded statement, expressed its concern over Pakistan holding elections in Gilgit-Baltistan. Analysts also felt that it will reassert New Delhi's position in the dispute and help in bringing international attention to the gross rights violations and exploitation Pakistan has been committing in the region.
There's a huge independence movement which exists in this region. People there want independence, they want a new state, they want to be away from Pakistan. So that, I think, is high time India raised this issue in the United Nations. India has to highlight the kind of atrocities which Pakistan Army and security forces, along with the militants, the Taliban variety of people, Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, etc., who have been forcibly settled there to dilute the local majority.
Gilgit-Baltistan was a part of India's erstwhile princely state of Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan, which illegally captured many parts of the northern state in 1947, divided it into two in 1970 and naming them Independent Jammu and Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. While India has termed the elections as Pakistan's camouflage to cover up its illegal occupation, even the locals claim the upcoming polls will be far from fair. Analysts added that the election was an eyewash as the chosen legislature has no actual powers.
These elections are a sham. The local body, which will be elected if any elections take place, has no powers whatsoever. Everything. They don't even have access to any money. They can't collect any resources. So it's an absolute sham.
Islamabad, which calls the Himalayan region as semi-autonomous, however, controls almost all of its affairs through a Gilgit-Baltistan council headed by the Pakistan Prime Minister. The election scheduled for Monday has already ran into many controversies, with even Pakistani political parties claiming that the polls will be rigged in favor of Prime Minister Sharif's party.
The NATO's Resolute Support Mission in Afghanistan has condemned the brutal killing of a group of aid workers by gunmen in northern Balkh province on Tuesday. This was the worst attack on aid workers by militants this year.
The headquarters' Resolute Support in a statement strongly criticized the gruesome act that claimed the lives of at least 9 Afghans. 7 aid workers and 2 security guards were shot dead by unidentified gunmen at a Europe-based group's field office in Zari district of the province on Tuesday. The victims, all Afghan nationals, were targeted while they were sleeping in an overnight raid in their guest house. The group, including 8 men and 1 woman, were employed by the Prague-based non-governmental People in Need. Governor of Balkh province, Atta Mohammad Noor, blamed President Ashraf Ghani for lack of leadership to counter the surge in terror activities in this part of the country. During a visit to provincial capital Mazar-e-Sharif, he said his warnings of rising militant violence in the northern province were not paid heed to.
مشکلات عمده‌ای که باید حل شود که نشده ارتباط میگیره بر رهبری حکومت وحدت ملی. من نمیخوام که از رئیس جمهور نام بگیرم یا از رئیس اجرایی نام بگیرم. ارتباط میگیره بر رهبری معلوم است که صلاحیت جکی داره. و اینا بین خود تنها و صادقانه کار نکردن، همش حرکت‌های نمایشی است. متاسفانه تا که با حرکت‌های نمایشی دست بزنن، خوب است که دوستانه و برادرانه واقعا صادقانه کار بکنن، در تعهدات خود صادق بوده باشند.
Though no group has so far claimed responsibility of Tuesday's attack, Taliban-led violence has seen an upswing in the otherwise peaceful regions around north and northeast Afghanistan this year. The attack came as Taliban has intensified its spring-summer offensive across the nation. Balkh, long considered a safe economic hub, has endured a spike in violence too. A Taliban attack on the Provincial Attorney General's office in April left 19 people dead and more than 60 wounded. According to reports, at least 26 aid workers have been killed, 17 wounded and 40 abducted since the beginning of 2015. The rising tide in such violence has also reportedly alarmed the United Nations and other humanitarian groups who have begun curtailing their activities in the war-torn nation.
While the global community is calling for rehabilitation of the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar, those living in Bangladesh fear eviction. The troubled sect continues to face an identity crisis. Here is a report.
Sheltering in the sweltering camps of mud houses in southern Bangladesh, these Rohingya Muslims who migrated from Myanmar 22 years ago fear that they would be asked to relocate again. Over 33,000 men, women and children crammed into two shabby camps in the villages of Kutupalong and Nayapara near the Myanmar border live off rations provided by aid workers. They are supported by the UN and the local authorities, but they now fear that Bangladesh government wants them to return to Myanmar, calling them the responsibility of that nation. Bangladeshi officials are reportedly looking for alternate places in remote territories to relocate the Rohingyas. While some feel the large number of migrants with no identity is creating problems for the local community, the refugees fear they might have to face more hurdles in the new area. Buddhist majority Myanmar has refused to recognize its estimated 1.1 million Rohingya population as citizens, even though many have lived for generations in its western Rakhine state. The government refers to them as Bengalis and considers them illegal immigrants from Bangladesh. This has left the community with no identity, forcing them to flee to other South Asian countries.
A power tussle between Pakistan's federal and provincial governments over the jurisdiction on petroleum resources has halted oil explorations in its Balochistan province. The mineral-rich region has for long accused Islamabad for exploiting its resources to benefit influential provinces without providing its due share.
Balochistan's demand that the federal government should recognize its constitutional right to award licenses to oil and gas exploration companies has resulted in delay of many key projects. According to the Pakistan Constitution, hydrocarbon is under dual jurisdiction, which means both Islamabad and the provincial authorities have equal rights in allocating these blocks. The federal government has, however, been issuing exploration permits to both local and international companies without consulting State Chief Minister Abdul Malik Baloch's office. Following the dispute, the Balochistan government has ordered the suspension of new surveys in the region by both domestic and international energy firms. This is not the first time the sharing of natural resources has become a flashpoint between the two sides. Balochistan, which sits on untold amounts of mineral resources, has been for long accusing Islamabad of exploitation. It accounts for around 23% of the total natural gas produced in the country. Even though the exact amount of oil reserves in Balochistan has not been assessed so far, due to its proximity with Iran, the province is believed to have rich reserves of petrochemicals as well. The region, which also has rich deposits of coal, gold and copper, however, remains the least developed province in Pakistan.
Nepal is struggling to gather back whatever it had lost in the deadly earthquakes. As things slowly return to normalcy, students are heading back to schools with hope for a better future amid heaps of debris.
Dressed in crisp, clean uniforms and making their way back through the rubble, children are returning to schools in the quake-devastated Nepal. While most of them have lost their homes, many have lost family members too. Despite living in makeshift tents across capital Kathmandu, the reopening of schools has brought back optimism among the survivors who see it as a step towards normalcy. Partially destroyed buildings have been rebuilt on temporary basis with materials such as bamboo, wood and tarpaulin.
We have to start. There is no choice, because education means future. If you don't start now, even it's going to affect your futures. So that's what we planning to start the school.
World bodies like the UNICEF and Red Cross are pooling in resources to help these schools resume functioning. Apart from their curriculum, the students are also getting lessons on what to do in the event of an earthquake. Their classes include simple advice on how to prepare and protect themselves during a natural calamity. Students said meeting their friends helped them cope with memories of the catastrophe.
We had missed so much of stories, we used to have fun, and in that way, at the house we have to sit alone and we have nothing to do at all, that's all.
Nepal was hit by a 7.8 magnitude earthquake on April 25th, followed by a massive aftershock on May 12th that left more than 8,700 people dead. While the Himalayan nation became a heap of rubble, more than 4,000 school buildings were severely damaged. Nepal now faces a challenge of rebuilding thousands of schools, among other works of rehabilitation. Officials have estimated a total reconstruction cost for the country to be $7 billion, a third of its annual GDP. While locals are still dealing with the trauma of the earthquake, school authorities and psychologists say for now the children need to play and socialize before formal studies begin in 2 weeks.
Fears of a drought loom large over India after the country's weather department predicted a dry monsoon season ahead. This is set to pose another challenge for the Narendra Modi-led government, as the unusual weather could result in a major setback for the country's farmers. A report.
The Indian Meteorological Department downgraded its monsoon outlook for the June to September period on Tuesday. These months are extremely crucial for the country's agrarian sector, as that's when more than 70% of the annual rains take place. The Weather Department has attributed the upcoming dry monsoon season to the prevailing El Nino. This weather condition results in warming of waters across the Pacific Ocean that in turn disrupts rainfall in India.
There are parameters, there are conditions of the global conditions in the temperature over the Pacific Ocean, Indian Ocean. All these are the developments have taken place over the last 1.5 months, right. And they are not developments which have taken place are not very much conducive for monsoon rainfall, and therefore we have slightly decreased our forecast, and from 93 now we are saying 88%.
A poor monsoon this fall would mean more crop failure for India's farmers. They've been battling unseasonal rains and hailstorms that resulted in widespread damage and crop loss in the March-April period. Hopes are now pinned on the Narendra Modi-led government that has promised to set up contingent measures to help the farmers.
एक प्रकार से दुखद भी है कि जो 2 महीने पहले हमारी संभावना थी उससे थोड़ा सा मानसून के रेनफॉल के कम होने की संभावना की हम आज बात कर रहे हैं। प्रधानमंत्री जी इस संभावना के संदर्भ में बहुत ही पूरी तरह से अवगत हैं, चिंतित हैं, और उन्होंने सारे कैबिनेट के कुलीग्स को अभी 2 दिन पहले भी कैबिनेट मीटिंग में अपने अपने विभागों में पूरी तैयारी इस दृष्टि से करने के लिए कहा है।
The prediction of yet another year of a deficient monsoon has aggravated the challenges that lie ahead of the Modi government. Analysts feel the government needs to divert attention from foreign policy initiatives and divert it towards taking contingency measures to contain the impending damage. Avneet Arora for South Asia Newsline in New Delhi.
Well, that's the way it was in South Asia this evening. Before we conclude the top stories once again, analysts ask India to raise Pakistan's rights violations in Gilgit at UN. NATO condemns rising attacks on aid workers in Afghanistan. And Nepal limping back to normal as schools reopen a month after quake. Now our viewers can watch the show on SouthAsiaNewsline.com. You can also visit us on Facebook.com/SAsiaNewsline and follow us on Twitter @SAsiaNewsline. That's all in tonight's edition. We'll see you same time tomorrow. Good night.